And I thought this year I would do a really good review, but on a film that people have either liked or hated, and another Poltergeist to do it. But the remake. And technically, this is both a remake and a reboot all in one. On one hand, we have a completely new family. There are actually two versions of the film on this disc. Now, I went to the theaters to see this movie, and I thought this is a perfect movie for the 13 days of Halloween. And it is. Here we are. So, how is this movie different from the original, which I did last year? Believe it or not, in some areas, not that different at all, except in others, very different. Now, the big thing here is the duality between not only this family and the Freelings, but also the ghosts themselves, the poltergeists. And I have to admit, they did a good job here. Now, the family structure is for the most part the same, minus the dog in this new one. That's right, there's no E-Buzz, and that actually works out. Plus, you do get a good, strong feeling about this family. The cool thing about this movie is that it's more modern, so there's more stuff that can go wrong with technology, but also more potential opportunities for contact. The other thing that happens, and I do mean this too, by the way, is the dynamic of the families. Now, in the original, it's 1980s, middle-class suburbia, slightly better than middle class. They ain't hurting until the sequel. They've got everything. They've got a house paid off, for crying out loud. Yet in this one, we have a family that's coming right out of the recession. I forget the exact date this came out, but I know it had to be either at or before 2017. So this gives you an idea. The father is without a job. He's been laid off. They are being forced to move into this new house. That right there is already a different dynamic. And, you know, they basically have to get a new house in order just to pay for stuff. I mean, they are literally being forced to downgrade here. That's how serious the story plot is. After that, we then move with them into several different areas. The story just keeps building, but we also see the concern, the desperateness for money, the fact that some of their credit cards are literally overdrawn. They're lucky if they can get parts to repair this house. They also notice that, oddly enough, the house has a security system for some odd reason. And the youngest daughter, she begins to experience things. Now, the middle son, he's also experiencing things, and he's trying to tell the parents what's going on. And it gets very interesting. That's why I think these two films are good. They're close enough together to where you can watch one and sort of see what the other one's doing, but it's that time period, effect, and the family dynamics that separate the two films. There's also the fact that when I watch the original film again, just for the hell of it, and I really want them to put that in 4K, that would be something I want to see reviewed. And this movie, we get an amazingly different experience here. We even get how cynical and like everything's a fake from some of the research people who come into the house. There is an actual difference, even with the timeline. You even see people who are making fun of, you know, like those ghost hunting shows and stuff. Like with the guy who's like, this house is clean, basically the film's version of Tangina. And the thing is that I love how these characters are done. Even certain scenes like, you know, how this one researcher's just going, well, it's a gift, and the psychic's like, yeah, I wouldn't call it a gift. You know, you can tell that even though he's used to doing this, he'd probably rather be doing something else, to be fair. And I totally get his point there, and that's pretty serious. Now, the cool thing is we also see technology come into this. So there is more of a technology point. Now, is the film scarier? In some areas, yes. In other areas, no. The cool thing about this film, and like with real investigations and stuff, is that there's actually a curve of what's going on. And every once in a while, it's completely calm, quiet, nothing. And then something happens. Now, in the original film, it was just left and right, practically. You're lucky if you had 5 minutes to yourself before something moved. In this film, it's more subtle, and it kind of attacks you when you're not expecting it. And yet, when it does go, it's like, boom, right up your ass. And I think that's what works here so well. The film does very good at that point, and I feel quite a bit for this one. Now, one big difference here between the original film and this one is the ghosts. They are described not only in the trailer but also by your major character as not being evil. They are desperate. People do some seriously bad stuff when they are desperate for something, and right now they want freedom. I mean, the whole film is again predicated on the graveyard thing, and there are actual stories of actual places of actual homeowners who didn't know their homes were built on graveyards, and all hell breaks loose. This is real stuff, and many times people find out about this. Well, guess what? This stuff not only happened, but it was very cool. Now in this film, it's very stylized and very like, let's make a spectacle. But for the most part, it's not that way at all. And the climax of this film is very different from the original, and yet very similar. And you understand what's going on. I even like that the ghosts themselves are not the primary villains. They are desperate, like I said, but they're not bad guys. You can tell instantly when you watch this film, and I want you to watch this film before, because I don't want to spoil that or how the ending is exactly going to play out. But you get a very different tone between the ones in the original film series and the ones in this series. And that alone could be a point for watching. But is it worth it? It's a good question to actually ask. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to pop out and play this movie? To hunt it down and watch it? My response is, if you're a Poltergeist fan, you deserve to at least see this film. I don't know if it's going to appeal to everybody. That's the only downside here. But otherwise, I think you'll get at least a little bit of enjoyment out of it. It's different, it's unique, and it actually did pretty good at the box office. This film actually did make its money back. Barely, but it did. It proved there was an audience for it. And it wasn't exactly what I would call a super low budget film. I mean, believe it or not, most ghost films like this do not cost an incredible amount of money to make. The most expensive one I think I've seen has probably been The Conjuring 2, which was a $40 million film. This was in the 30 range. So you can do a lot with very little nowadays. And this film was in a time period where we were starting to get into that zone. And yet, it's played so well. There's so much going on with the actors, the characters, the environment. And the fact that they did so much with so little is actually a good thing. Again, this is not going to appeal to everybody, and I do want to make that very clear, but it is going to be fun. Plus, there's actually some pretty good comedy here. Some of it is forced, some of it is like, okay, whatever. So I don't know quite what you can expect. But I am going to give the film at least a 7 out of 10 with at least watch it for yourself. It's worth it. Check it out. And it is definitely a different film. You can tell. Either way, guys, this is one of our Halloween days. Have fun, like and subscribe, and remember, happy Halloween. I'll see you guys later.